Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, or maybe good afternoon, Isaac. Yeah,
Hello.
Yeah, you are in the United States, right?
In Canada, Vancouver.
Yeah, so it's not evening, yeah, for
Not
you.
evening. No, I've just gotten up.
Okay, good morning then. And I guess since it's a chess site, I will need to introduce Isaac. For many years, for I think at least maybe 15 years, yeah.
Yeah.
You are Isaac is a professional poker player, and I will probably do short interview with you. As far as I know, you are pretty much an all-around player. Yeah, you were not specializing in heads up or six max or.
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. Most recently, I've been playing a lot of no limit tournaments. Because I've been playing entirely online for the last year, and that's mostly what's running. Before that, I was playing quite a bit of live cash games in Las Vegas, mainly mixed games where you play a variety of different games, mostly fixed limit rather than pot limit or no limit. But yeah, over my career, I've played a variety of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And have you battled in 8-game with like Kostritsin, Souls, Turi?
Yeah, quite a bit. Kostritsin plays a lot in that mixed game in Las Vegas that I was talking about.
Uh-huh. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, Isaac is as all-around poker player as it gets, I guess. And I think he became famous after winning Bahama Adventure, yeah?
Yeah, my first big live result was second place in the WPT in the Bahamas in 2007.
But didn't you win this heads up when you made this crazy 4-bet bluff with some cheese?
No, that was about the last hand I won in that heads up match. I won that hand.
So you did lose it after it
and got second.
Okay.
Everyone thinks I won that tournament.
Okay, so I guess then for some time, let's do some chess.
All right.
What your level you consider?
I don't know. I probably play at like a 1200 level or something these days. I played pretty seriously from when I was like 6 years old to 12 years old. I played a lot of tournaments and took lessons and was, a pretty good scholastic player. Like the pinnacle of my chess career was probably 8th in New York State for second graders. Mm-hmm. And I have played very little in the last 10 years or so.
Okay, so let's first do an exercise which I think is essential for every player, is to know which square is which color, and it should be done, extremely fast. It should be like G4 white, E7 black. I mean, eventually it should be done at that speed. So let's first do A1. Okay, at first don't try black. To be too fast, but yeah, so
black.
E2.
Is it cheating to look at the board?
No, you can look, but I took away the coordinates.
Yeah, sure.
E2.
White.
F8.
Black.
Okay, so that's excellent. Okay, so then I guess tell me what's your preferable openings. Let's begin with white.
I guess when I played a lot, I pretty much always played king pawn openings. I from white kind of liked to play sort of wild attacking gambit sort of stuff. When I was a kid, I thought that was fun. I played a lot of like Danish gambit.
Good. It's fantastic actually, because I actually had a quick look at their training session yesterday, and Peter advocates playing after e4, playing e5, and okay, I guess let's play knight f3.
Yeah,
he will not play knight c6. That's what he taught Patrick yesterday, and let's maybe play. You will have to choose one of two gambits. So let's play bishop c4. He was advocating bishop c5, and now it's up to you to decide. We can play either Evans, it's b4. Already I think he didn't show it yesterday. So now, okay, by far the main option is to take. And we play c3. That's the whole point of this b4, is to win tempi for c3, because if you play c3 one move earlier, it's called Italian game, and it's more positional. Black plays knight f6 and so on. So with b4 you win a tempi, and then you play c3, and now no matter where he goes with his bishop, to a5, c5, d6, e7, or even if he makes a stupid move back to f8, against any of those moves we play d4.
Right.
We play d4, and then again, against most moves we will castle. So even if he, let's say, takes the pawn, we will just castle, and we will try to for quick attack. Let's, for example, let's say he takes. Now we will get a very strong initiative. We play queen b3, attacking f7 pawn. I don't know how to make arrows, but yeah, f7. Basically, f7 is a weak point of position from in the starting position. If you take a look, let's say, for example, e7 is protected by 4 pieces: king, queen, bishop, and knight. d7 the same. And okay, c7 also protected once, but it's, you know, further from the king. And f7 is only protected by the king. So it's like the weak point. So in this position we play queen b3, and we are, I mean, it's still the game only beginning here, but definitely we took over the initiative. So let's say he plays queen e7 to protect. Now we grab the pawn and developing knight. We want now knight d5. I really wish I could draw arrows, but I'm not sure how to do it. So let's say he takes, we take. We attack g7 with our queen. So let's say he plays knight f6, developing knight and protecting g7. Now we play bishop a3, we attack his queen. Okay, d6 is a normal move. Now we go for brok, you know, e5. And now, for example, Peter will say knight, and Patrick, instead of playing the correct knight e4, where it's still, we are still pressing, but the game is still goes. Patrick will obviously grab the pawn. We will take the knight, he will take with the queen, and we will pin this queen and say GG.
All right.
So that's the plan. Of course, there are, you know, numerous options for black, like I guess now, but by nowadays theory, the most solid option is bishop e7, but still we just play d4. He has to know knight a5, and okay, I mean, it's pointless to continue. We cannot, you know, study the whole theory. It will take, you know, several hours. But I like, especially
if you want to
like,
give me some homework, I can try to study some of these lines before tomorrow.
I don't know. It's like trying to study some ranges for.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's not so simple. It's a lot of work. But I think it's already quite good. One thing is he might get scared, like he will, how to say, to be stubborn, like your opponent gives you a pawn, so you just on principle decline it, yeah?
Yeah.
And we'll play bishop b6, which is a totally normal option. Now, so now we need to be precise for a couple of moves. So we play a4. The point is we are threatening to get his bishop. So if he plays some neutral move like knight f6, we play a5, bishop d4, c3, and the bishop is trapped. I mean, the game still goes on. He can take on f2, take on e4. We will go, I guess, to g1. But we have a piece for 2 pawns, which is good, yeah, because normally piece is worth 3 pawns.
Right.
So a4. So normally he chooses between a5 and a6 to save his bishop. Let's say he plays a5. We then play b5. Okay, now only reasonable move is knight d4. And now we have some options. I don't know. Normally we should play a bit positionally here. I don't know, but let me think for a second how to make things, spice the things up. Maybe knight c3. Yeah, maybe knight c3. Okay, let's say he plays some normal move, d6. To protect the pawn, we will play knight d5, continuing to harass his bishop. And it's actually my game against Carlsen. And okay, it continued like this. He played. It was okay. It was bullet game, like 1 minute per game. So it's not a very serious game. So bishop g4.
Still pretty cool to have your games just come up in the bottom as you're playing out the line.
Yeah. So he pinned our knight, but we don't care too much. We actually provoke him to take, to release this tension. So he took, I took with the pawn. He moved away his bishop. Now rook g1, attacking g7, and he gave away a pawn. And okay, we have a nice position here. It's still extremely complicated, but it's, it's usually, because usually in modern chess, to get such a mess, you need to how to say, to make some concessions. But here it's not the case at all. So I like it. And if he plays a4, a6, then it's here. Yeah, we play knight c3. Again, we want knight d5. Okay, so normally black goes knight f6, and now we go for some very forced line. We play knight d5. He, let's say, takes e5, knight d4. It's like semi-forced. It's not really forced, but. And now the whole point of this line, we play a5, bishop a7, and d6. And the point is, let's say he takes, and we probably take. He takes, and I'm not sure exactly. Maybe we. The point was like maybe we play queen f3. Attacking f7 again, so castle, c3, bishop a7, and castle. And the point is his bishop on c8 is stuck. This pawn, he has an extra pawn, but actually all this pawn is doing is hindering his development. I mean, he would love to just get rid of this d7 pawn, just shit from the board, you know, but it's not allowed by the rules. And we are pressing again. Here it's more positional, but you know, he will need to make some concession to free his bishop on c8 because it's impossible to keep playing the whole game with this, because also when if you will be stuck with this bishop on c8, then your rook on a8 also will be stuck forever. So you need to free your bishop. So that's pretty much it. Maybe they will get scared of all this and will try to you know, be smart and play knight f6. Basically, it's another way trying to reach Italian. So if we play d3 here, then he will go bishop c5, and he reached his beloved Italian without allowing us Evans gambit, because now b4 is obviously pointless, because okay, the whole point of Evans is to play c3 and d4 very quickly, and here we are already played d3, so it just doesn't make sense. So after knight f6, again we remember what is his weakest point, and just play brutally knight g5.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's actually very serious opening. Like Evans is a little bit, you know, offbeat, you know, it's a little bit questionable, but this one is just very serious. Knight g5, so he has basically two moves, and only one of them is serious. So it's d5. Another one is what's called Traxler gambit. It's bishop c5, and the point is, if white is naive and plays knight take f7, attacking queen and rook at the same time, then black plays bishop take f2 with just amazing how to say, complications, like for example king take f2, knight take e4, king g1, queen h4, threatening mate on f2.
Oh, wow, yeah.
g3, knight take g3. Let's say we take this knight that he takes.
That fell apart quickly.
Yeah, king. No, it's still, I think it still should end up in a draw, but it's very dangerous for white. So we are not being naive. We take with the bishop, and not being so greedy also. We are content with being a pawn up and his king being in center. So he plays king e7, and we just go back to c4, and then we just try to finish our development. So let's say he plays rook f8, we play d3, because it's an illusion, because bishop f2 is nothing. He has this discovered check, even double check, but we just move away our king, and there is no mate, because his queen is stuck on d8, so and you cannot checkmate normally without a queen. So okay, so let's say d3, he plays d6, and we just play maybe castle, or knight c3 maybe is the move. He has some kind of compensation. He might try some queen e8, queen g6 maneuver, but it's, you know, I mean, we have an advantage, but it's playable for black. It's not completely bad. But the main move is d5 here. We take. Now it's already very dangerous for them, because Peter will have to say knight, and I mean, there is the obvious move with the knight is to take back on d5, and then we launch a huge attack with knight take f7, king f7, queen f3 check. Oh, yeah. So if he goes like back, then we just win back a knight. We have extra pawn and big advantage. So he has to play to the center. We now play knight c3, again attacking this knight. He normally plays knight b4. We now castle. He probably has to, how to say, extra protect this knight, because we were threatening a3 to hit this knight on b4, and if it moves, we take on d5. So he has to take this action, play c6. We can now play d4, and like maybe computer defense here, but not humans, and we will crash here. I'm pretty sure. Okay, and the main line here. There is one thing you need to know. If they're super tricky and play b5, then amazingly the best move by far is bishop f1 back. It's amazing.
I would not find that.
Okay, I will try to explain the point. So if you take, then he takes with the queen and hits both b5 and g2. So we cannot just play knight c3 because he takes on g2.
Right.
So then if we take, he takes, and he has nice compensation. I mean, normal compensation. And if you play bishop b3, which also looks like a very natural move, he has knight d4, hitting this bishop, and again he has actually a very fine position. So bishop f1, that's why it's such an ingenious move. Now he's a bit in trouble. So if he takes with the queen, now g2 is protected. So we can just play knight c3. And then we will take with bishop on b5, having extra pawn, and everything is nice. If he now plays knight d4, like he did against bishop b3, now we have c3, because now knight is not hitting the bishop.
Right.
Like here, if bishop b3, knight d4, now if c3, he would just take on b3 and then take on d5. And he has completely fine position, maybe some advantage even. So bishop f1, and what else? If he takes with knight, then we take on b5. And although we lost tempi, now he doesn't have queen take d5. And again, and although our knight is hanging on g5, he cannot take, because we will take with a check and then take on d5. And even we will, by doing so, we will protect g2. So he takes, we take, and shake hands. I think last thing before you get bored with all those things is knight a5 is like main line. Now we check. He plays c6 normally, take, and now there is huge theory. I don't know, the most popular move now is bishop d3, which again looks very weird.
It does, yeah.
But the point is to prepare e4 square for the knight. So if black plays h6, we can go to e4. Unlike if we play bishop e2, which was the old main line, then he plays h6. We now have to go to f3, and he plays e4, and we have to play knight e5, and the knight is, a little bit in the air here. So so bishop d3, and let's just stop here because it's too complicated.
Okay.
Now, I will just show you one recent game just for you to appreciate the madness in this line. It's Wesley So against Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen is world champion, and Wesley So is a very big player. So the game continued: knight d5, knight f3, bishop d6, castle, rook e1, attacking e5 pawn. So what does black do? he plays f5, like if he blundered this pawn, but no, it's just the beginning of big theory. Queen f6, knight f3, g5. The point is black wants g4 and knight is stuck. So again, what white does, he doesn't care. He plays c4, knight f4, bishop f1, g4, d4, take, knight e6, c5, bishop c7, and queen c3 apparently was a novelty here, new move. Before that, it was all already known. Okay. I mean, it's just, I mean, it's completely crazy line. It's like, you know, like something like solver, something, and it's impossible to understand. It's the same here. It's just some moves by computer, boom, boom, boom. Why? I mean, you should take several days to understand, you know, the purpose of those moves.
This is a strange position. It looks like white is in really bad shape, but
white, no, but white has 3 pawns for the knight, and this knight on a5 is very bad, and black king is a little bit weak, so it's hard to, but of course, according to computer, it should end in a draw, but in some crazy, after another 10 crazy moves.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I guess we should finish with this, with white, okay, and with black, if e4, then what are you playing?
Either e6 or e5. I've done some of both.
Okay, let's just for the change, let's play e6 maybe.
Yeah.
Because with e5 they're experts themselves. So e6. Now I don't know what they will play. Okay, let's say they will play the main line with this. What are you playing? Because there is three completely different lines. Like you can play d4, knight f6, or bishop b4, and they lead to
bishop b4 is what looks familiar to me. I think that's a line I used to play.
Okay, so let's do bishop b4. Okay, here it's with black it's always a bit harder to study, because with white you sort of putting pressure, and with black obviously he has more he has more choice, of course. When he is white, there is nothing to do, so he has tons of moves. He has knight g2, he has a3, bishop d3, queen d3, bishop d2, but by far the main move is e5. I guess, okay, if you like active play, let's play c5, a3.
Yeah, that looks like the move I used to make there.
take, and okay, it's now not a big difference. You can play knight e7 or queen c7, which looks more familiar.
I think probably the knight.
Okay, knight. Yeah, and now, okay, if he plays slowly, it's impossible to cover in 10 minutes. So one important thing is queen g4. How do you deal with this?
That's a good question. Do you just push the g-pawn?
No, because already you have given up your dark squared bishop, and if you play g6, now your all dark squares will be weak. No, basically, nowadays the main line is c take d4. Now, if he plays c d4, which is very natural, we play queen c7. And our main threat is queen c3 check. So like if he, let's say, grabs the pawn foolishly, we play queen c3 check and win his rook.
I see, yeah.
And even we can first take a pawn with a check, and only then take the rook. So he has to deal with this, and if he plays bishop d2, we now take this pawn.
Yeah.
Now, what is very important is that if he plays rook c1, we play queen g6, and our c8 bishop is protected by knight.
Right.
And so he has to take, I guess, more or less. We play rook g8. He goes somewhere, and we now, although our king side is ruined, but we are very quick. We can castle queen side with some bishop d7 castle. Our rook is playing on g file. It will be difficult for him to castle, because once he moves his bishop, we will just take on g2 and ruin his king side. So it's a nice position for black. So that's why after cd4 here, the main move for white is not cd4, but queen take g7. We play rook g8 always. He takes second pawn. Now we first play queen c7, threatening queen takes c3. He normally plays knight e2. And now, I guess we play, maybe we first play knight bc6. White almost always play f4 to protect this e5 pawn. And then we take dc3, and it's huge complications. It's again impossible to cover, but black has a very decent compensation. Very important thing is, if he plays queen d3, we play d4. We protect this pawn, and if he now takes on d4, we take bishop d7, and again, it's huge theory. It's impossible to cover. But I mean, we do have some, development advantage. Like if you will notice, only his queen is developed. All his other pieces are at starting squares, and we have almost everything is developed after we castle long. Although I guess we should not do it immediately, because our a7 pawn will be hanging. But I mean, after eventually we castle long, we will have all our pieces playing, rook playing on g file, this rook will be playing on d file, knight will go to f5, bishop maybe to long diagonal, and so on. So it's objectively okay for black, but also practically it's completely okay. Okay, so I think, have you ever done some kind of tactics training? So basically, I'm just wondering how to do it. Because, let me think. Okay, I will now do this. Stop. Okay. Okay, so do we do it for time or a classical one?
Should probably do time. I think it's a pretty quick time control for the match tomorrow, and I do tend to struggle with playing quickly.
Okay, so it will be 5 minutes, and for each correct answer, we will get 3 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, so, it's not easy. I don't know. I cannot make it bigger. I believe I will try, but one moment. How to make it bigger.
I can maybe make it a little bit bigger just for myself on my screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to do it.
Okay, so this is white to move.
No, here it's a combination. It's not like just grabbing something. It's like 3 moves combination.
Okay. Not necessarily a mating combination, just some.
No,
there's
just a winning one.
There's a winning combination for white here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe I will say the first move because without it, it's a bit difficult. So like this. Now you should solve.
Is it knight to h6 check?
It's a relevant idea, but it will not give you anything. You will just take with the pawn.
And then taking with bishop is not winning.
Basically, most of combinations is you should notice his weak points and his loose pieces, and somehow combine it. You know, combine threats.
I'm looking for a way to get the bishop involved. It seems like we need to get more pieces into the attack.
No, let's begin with what is his weak point around the king.
It seems like both g7 and h7 are undefended, but g7 is easier to attack because we have the dark square bishop.
Yeah, also g7 we have already attacked.
And we already have
So g7 is his weak point, and what is his loose pieces? Like unprotected. Unprotected or not enough protected.
None of the pieces are entirely unprotected, but I guess the bishop
one of his pieces is entirely unprotected. We just haven't attacked it yet. It has 0 defenses on it. Like, for example, bishop is protected by the queen.
Right. The queen is not protected by anything.
Yeah, queen is not protected, yes. And his weak point is g7. So now you have to combine it somehow.
I do not see an obvious way to attack the queen.
No, first you attack g7.
Yeah.
And then in some way you will attack the queen next move.
I see. Queen to g.
I'm sorry.
G4.
Queen g4. Yeah, bravo. Queen g4, and after he protects, we have knight h6 discovered.
Right. Yeah, I see it
attack
now.
on the queen. Okay, let's do second one, and I guess we will maybe switch to poker. Oh, okay. So now it's nicer. Actually, here we have two winning moves, but there is mate in two.
Mate in two. Let's see. Oh, yeah, just queen to f7, right?
Yes.
And then you take with the pawn. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's a mate here again. Mate in three now.
Mate in three. Yeah, queen h1.
Bravo.
And rook takes knight. And yeah.
Okay. Here we need to make a draw.
Well, we don't have that many legal moves, so
yeah, that
shouldn't
helps.
be too difficult. Take e2 forces stalemate, right?
Right. Okay. Mate in three.
Looks like queen h2 does it, right? Queen takes h2.
And I take?
Yeah.
And how do you?
Queen takes h2?
King h2?
Queen.
Yes, queen take h2, rook, king take h2.
Rook h4?
Yes, and you overlooked queen h3.
Oh, I did, yeah. I did, yeah. What does he have if we play rook h4? He can,
I guess bishop f4.
Yeah, he can protect with bishop f4, but that just hangs the... Oh, no, it doesn't hang the bishop because we lose the queen.
No, but usually, when it's mate in 2 or 3, it's just check, check, mate. I mean,
yeah, oh, no, I think I see it now. It's queen takes f3?
Yes, that's it.
And then rook to e1. Yeah.
Bravo. This one is mate in 2.
Oh, okay. Rook f8.
Yes, to unpin the queen.
Yeah, exactly. I looked at it at first. I thought, oh, it's mate in 1, and then I realized the queen is pinned, and then the move is pretty obvious.
Queen d7. Okay. It's in the main line. It's mate in 2, but he can avoid. But then he can resign.
bishop to h3.
Yes. Yeah, he was not forced to take, but then he just loses.
But
and,
yeah, he loses one way or another, and now it's queen to h1, mate.
Yes. Okay, we have time for one more. Okay, this one we just need to win material, big material.
Win big material.
We have 2 seconds left or something.
Knight takes e6.
Yes,
might not be right, but it's the first thing I see.
And the queen is trapped. Okay, so fantastic. I think we are huge favorites. Overwhelming. Okay, so and one thing I wanted to say that at first I thought I will, how to say, to make because I'm choosing the piece, to play. I mean, not exact piece, but how to say, the name of the piece,
right.
Because we have 2 knights. And I thought I will play, how to say, where you have a lot of neutral moves. But now I see that you don't like neutral moves. Actually, you like to, to attack. So I will probably at least try to choose pieces with which you can make good active moves. So so look for active moves, because if I have chosen a certain piece, then probably there is some,
that makes sense.
Move. I guess you understand what I mean. So I think that's it for chess part.
So we are going to switch to poker now.
I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah, let me get it open. Sorry, just a moment here. Here we go. Is this working properly now?
Yes. Maybe before we start with actual hands or so on, I wanted to discuss a couple topics with you about general things.
My idea had just been to play through some hands in a trainer, but if you have any questions you want to ask, that's great. I would
because the thing is, I've been playing professionally and semi-professionally for many years, but I was never, hanging with poker players too much. I mean, I was always an online player. Like 99% of my volume was always online. So
I think we maybe have played together a little.
For sure, yes, for sure we played. And so I just never had an opportunity to ask people. Like one thing I wanted to ask is how much you think is ICM overrated nowadays? Because my point is, for example, let's say you are left four-handed and you have 40 big blinds, one guy has 20 and two have 10 big blinds each. So now if everyone plays according to ICM, you will definitely win more than 50% of the time, right?
Right.
You have 50% of the chips, but if everyone follows ICM, you will definitely win more. I don't know, but 55% at least, if it's long structure, So that means, let's say if you are actually the 20 big blinds guy, so if you double through 40 big blind guy, you are in his shoes right now, So actually you should be you should not follow ICM completely, right? Because
I agree,
if you get his stack, you actually have more EVs than what ICM suggests.
Absolutely. And I think that's a big area where the top players are, trying to improve, and there's a lot of remaining disagreement between strong players about exactly how this sort of thing works. And yeah, ICM is a pretty primitive model. There's not an obviously better thing, but it is, I don't think it's ideal to play exactly like the ICM outputs suggest. I think.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised. Sometimes in some training videos, people say, it's bad by ICM. Okay, what a punt by some, very respected, nosebleed MTT player. But I think it's not as simple for sure as.
No, it's definitely not that simple. So, yeah, ICM, it's tempting to lean on it more than you should because it gives you easy answers. You can say, modify the payoffs for each play according to the ICM outputs, and then you get a firm right answer for the range you should call a shove with or whatever. But it's only as good as the assumptions, and the assumptions aren't actually that good. So I do think the top players are taking it heavily into consideration that the ICM model is not perfect, and that that underlying assumption that your probability of winning the tournament is exactly equal to your percentage of chips in play doesn't apply. That when you're the chip leader, it's a bit more, and when you're the other stacks, it's a bit less. And you have to kind of take ICM as like a pretty good heuristic starting point, and then kind of fudge it in different directions based on the more difficult to quantify factors. So like, for example, in a three-handed situation where there is one larger stack and two equal stacks, say 50 big blinds and 220 big blind stacks, the 20 big blind stack that is to the left of the big stack might be more incentivized to take risks and play closer to chip EV as opposed to the stack that's to the right, because
he gets always shoved on.
He gets always shoved on, exactly. So the longer that situation persists, because both stacks are playing tight and trying to outlast each other, the more the stack on the left gets beaten down, and the more the stack on the right gets slightly more opportunities to make aggressive plays themselves, and sort of the chips flow to the chip leader faster from the one on the left than the one on the right. And so that player is more heavily incentivized to do something to break that pattern, to call it off a little looser or make a looser re-raise or whatever. And yeah, you have to be looking for sort of patterns like that that will play out over multiple subsequent hands in order to adjust your approximation of what the stacks are worth.
And what do you think about like if we are talking about some super high rollers, when there is a group of same like 30 people playing all of them, like for the future tournaments, can it be valuable for people to know that you are a bit loser, like calling their shoves a bit loser?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and that's another one that like it's quite difficult to work out in very clear quantitative terms. Like you probably can set up some kind of toy game theory model for an iterated game with non-zero sum payouts. Like that's basically what a lot of these ICM spots are, right? Where if I make some call that is a little bit too loose, it costs me a small amount. And if you shove some wide range into me and I call a little bit too loose, it's going to cost me a small amount and it's going to cost you a big amount. And the difference is going to be distributed to all the players who are not involved in the hand. You're going to lose a lot. I'm going to lose a little, and everybody else is going to gain. And you can set up a model of a situation like this, and if it's an iterated game, if it's a single game, and almost always when people are doing poker theory, they think about a single game. In a single game, you just make your loose shove, and I never make a losing call because we're playing the situation once, and there's no incentive for me to make a losing call. But if you set up some model of an iterated game where we know we're going to play this game over and over again, and you're going to know what happened last time when you're making your decision the next time, and so am I. I do think strategies start to fall out of that kind of model where the defending player does some, to use poker slang, some spike calling, some making slightly losing calls that are a little bad for me and very bad for you. And I think you do reach an iterated equilibrium where the threat that I might spike call you occasionally forces you to play significantly tighter, and I gain EV in the long run by being willing to occasionally make losing plays in the short run. Again, it's, I think, quite difficult to model even in a very abstract toy game sort of situation. And I've never seen anything approaching a realistic full-scale model of like what this should look like and like how you actually implement a randomized spike calling frequency or something like that. But just looking at it from a very high level, it does seem clear that stuff like that does exist. And you can imagine in the practical scenarios where you gain an advantage from having your opponents fear that you are willing to make slightly optimistic, ambitious gambling decisions that gives you a certain sort of initiative and greater control over the gameplay. But at the same time, it's really easy to overdo it, and then you're just making bad plays that cost you a lot of money. So yeah, it's quite complicated, but I do think it's a real phenomenon.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you said it because I was thinking about it for many years, but never actually read about it or heard it anywhere.
There's like some academic research done on like iterated prisoner's dilemma type of stuff that I think is potentially informative for what these kind of how this kind of decision making works. I don't know if you've
I read like Wikipedia about this prisoner's dilemma and so on.
So there's artificial intelligence research done on iterated prisoner's dilemma, where you play the prisoner's dilemma game over and over and over again, millions of iterations, and there are different strategies that you can use for playing that game that can be quite complicated. They have machine learning algorithms doing it and stuff, but if I'm remembering correctly, it turns out that about the best you can do for a strategy for that is what's called tit for tat, where you just make the play your opponent made last. If they defect, you defect. If they cooperate, you cooperate. And that sort of, punishing defection gets you to both players cooperating pretty reliably. And it seems likely that there's a kind of similar phenomenon in these sort of poker situations where, like, in a lot of cases, ICM is a bit of a prisoner's dilemma, where you want the two players involved in the hand kind of want to cooperate, and yeah, I think that there may be a bit of a mechanic where, in iterated situations, you punish defectors. Somebody spike calls you, you have to spike call them back eventually.
So next time, Bryn Kenny calls Chidwick with sevens.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like we can talk about this topic for hours. Yeah, there is no.
Yeah, it's extremely deep, and I don't think anyone understands it very well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I also wanted to ask about two concepts I don't really get, because my main game was PLO, and then I started to play some hyper turbos sit and goes.
Yeah, so, I've played with you in both of those games.
Yeah, so with more or less deep no limit hold'em, I'm a total fish basically.
Okay.
There are two concepts I don't understand. Like, one, what is the threshold for like calling against shoving on the turn, for example, with weak made hand? Like, let's say the guy opens from whatever low jack, like min raises, you defend your jack 5 suited, the flop is jack deuce 6, you check call, turn is 10 and bringing some flush draws that you don't have, and he bets. Yeah, so now let's say after calling, you will have 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio. Yeah, I guess now it's a very standard call, right?
Yeah,
versus a shove. Yeah, but what if, let's say, you will have 50% of pot left? If it's still just a call, what if you will have 40%? I mean, where is this,
Oh, I see what you mean. So on the turn, at what point does it go from mostly calling with your medium made hands to just raising to
just
in the hand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tricky question.
And I mean, of course, on a drawy boards, yeah, if it's ace high, paired, rainbow,
right.
Of course it's completely different.
If it's a static board, very often you will call even if it's leaving a very small amount behind, because there's just very little protection gained by shoving. And yeah, that is kind of the big factor, is that the more dynamic the board, the more the river is going to change who is ahead, the more reluctant you are to call rather than raise out of position. So, like, for example, the spot you described, Jack 6-2 flop, 10 turn, is going to get probably more raising and less calling than the same flop and then a 3 or another 2 on the turn, because there are all of these straight draws around the Jack 10 now, and you don't want to let your opponent bet the turn and then get to see the river for free and make another decision with hands like King Queen, King 9, whatever on a Jack 10 high board.
So is there some kind of rule or at least a guideline? Let's say in exactly this spot, let's say low jack raises, jack 6 deuce rainbow, you call 10 bringing flush draw.
Yeah.
And what is after you calling, what is how to say the maximum or minimum amount of pot left with which you will call, and if it's lower than that, you will shove?
I think there's not a very, very clearly delineated line. It's the sort of it's the sort of thing that is it's a spectrum. It's not binary. I think down to a very small percentage of the pot, like potentially, a scenario where you're leaving behind only 25% of the pot after calling the turn, you're still going to have some frequency to call rather than raise. It's just going to get to be less and less the lower that number is. And it will obviously go all the way to zero as the amount left behind goes to nearly zero. But for any meaningful amount, generally, kind of, if you think about like working towards an equilibrium from the perspective of both players' strategies, if the in-position player is playing well, they're not going to bet a size that makes it correct for you to always raise and never call. So they have the option to choose a size here. And if they've chosen a size where it's correct for you to always raise and never call, that means they've chosen the wrong size.
Then they just could shove themselves, yeah? Or
they could bet a little smaller, and it would have they would have the exact same effect and like greater leverage for their bluffs, basically. So say there's 10 in the pot and 20 left to play. And we feed this situation into a solver and we give them a bet size of 10. So they're betting full pot, and after you call, there's going to be 1/3 pot left to play on the river. Mm-hmm. And we make that the only size they're allowed to have, and we observe that you never call that bet. You always either shove or fold. When we see that in the outputs, we can conclude that they've probably bet too big. And if we go back and we run it again and we let them bet either 7 or 10, they're probably going to often choose 7. And you're going to almost always raise, but not 100% of the time against that size. And they're going to gain a bit of EV by playing that somewhat smaller size because they get to bluff a bit more efficiently and risk less on the turn and get to play some rivers.
Mm-hmm.
So it tends not to be the case that in these turn spots that the best play for the in-position player leads to the out-of-position player always raising and never calling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so so there is no clear answer, and
no very clear answer to that question, I think.
And okay, one last general question.
Sure.
What I don't understand a bit, this conception of let's say you defend the big blind with 4-5 offsuit.
Mm-hmm.
The flop is 4, 6, 10.
Mm-hmm.
Rainbow, whatever, and you sometimes check raise with your 4-5 if he bets small, and because I was always, teach that at least in no limit hold'em, you mostly, raise for value or for bluff, and here it's like no better hand folds and so on. So it's like not, but it's also not for value.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that Solver recommends it and that it works well in practice, but how can you describe in words why is it?
Sure. Yeah, that is a kind of play that I think we all found out is better and more common than we would have expected once we started studying solver outputs in the last few years. And it has been tricky to make sense of, I think. But I think those plays accomplish several important things. So for one thing, it is important to reach a certain overall frequency for raising the flop in these lines in order to give your opponent a difficult decision about whether or not to bet hands that will fold to a raise or will call a raise, but for very little EV. The hands that are unhappy to face a raise. You want to give them a difficult decision about whether or not to continuation bet with those hands. And so you need to reach a certain overall frequency to raise the flop in order to accomplish that. And then you want to have a variety of different kinds of hands in your range going into the turn after you have raised, that raising these like weak bottom pair sort of hands at a certain frequency helps you to achieve, because if you play the more sort of intuitive pre-solver approach of check raising a very polarized range of really strong hands and drawing hands that you're playing as bluffs or just very weak hands that you're playing as bluffs, then you can imagine having that sort of range and getting to the turn and now if you check, mostly you're going to want to bet with that sort of range, because if you check, your opponent is going to be pretty happy to just check behind, because you don't really have good hands to check call with that want to see the river badly. You just have bluffs and value bets. And now if you put in a few of these medium strength hands, you can raise the flop and then check the turn and very often get to the river for free. And by slotting in these medium strength hands, you put more pressure on your opponent to bet the turn to try to bluff you off these weaker hands that you're trying to get to showdown with. And you can gain a lot by taking a hand like bottom pair, raising the flop, getting some folds from two overcards that have, 15-20% equity, and then getting to showdown without putting any additional money in, which is what would happen pretty reliably if you added just a tiny bit of hands like that to the more conventional, very polar check raising range. So basically, a few medium hands play really well slotted into a range that's mostly polarized.
Excuse me. So if you check raise those hands, get called, then on most vast majority of turns you are checking, right?
Yeah.
You are not trying to turn it into a bluff. turns. I mean,
sometimes when many draws complete, so that a lot of the hands you were using as a bluff on the flop become very strong hands. Now you'll take what was a medium hand on the flop and is now one of the weakest hands you can have, and you'll turn that into a bluff on later streets. But on turns where very little changes and that hand remains toward the middle of your range, you're almost always going to check with it.
Okay, so thank you, and apologies for so many questions.
Oh, no, not at all. That was great. Yeah, I really appreciate you having questions ready to go, and I think that was a really good discussion.
Yeah, because somehow those are three topics I never anywhere saw any info. No,
yeah, those are really good questions that you don't see a lot of coverage of.
Okay, so let's move on with what you were.
Yeah, sure. So I just have this trainer tool here ready to go, and I just thought we would play through some shallow heads up no limit hands, just and talk about anything interesting that comes up as we do, and kind of get a feel for the sort of poker we are likely to be playing in the match tomorrow. So what I have loaded up here is 25 big blinds deep, single raised pot. So button raises pre-flop with a range that looks like that. It's
so I
none
guess
of the very weakest hands.
Quite a bit of limping, yeah. I mean,
yeah, yeah, more limping than raising at 25 big blinds, but this is a raised pot, and you can see it's none of the very weakest hands, and you can see by either the numbers or the shading here, the frequencies of other things. It's kind of weighted toward the best hands. And then for the big blind, it's a considerably more defined range. It's none of the very worst hands, but also never a pocket pair, never any of the best aces. And then, yeah, some frequency to have just about everything else, but weighted toward medium to weak stuff. And we can just play some hands. To start with here, we've got...
Let me load my RTA. Okay, I'm kidding. Okay, so first question, if we donk here, yeah?
Yeah.
Like the board is decent for donking, but
yeah,
I don't know. I could never catch this donking thing. I mean, like in PLO some years ago, I finally started to do, but in Hold'em I almost never do. So even if it's...
Yeah, I think that's common even among the very top players. In ring games, you see very little leading from the big blind.
Even if it's somehow right thing to do, I would still check here.
Yeah. And yeah, this is actually 100% check. These 3 to a wheel boards where an ace is a gut shot tend to get very little or no leading, even when other low boards might, because the fact that the ace makes a gut shot really counteracts the sense that the low board is favorable for the out of position player.
Okay, here, okay, like in 6 max, I would bet small, almost 100%. In heads up, I'm not sure, but I would definitely bet our hand.
Yeah. So this model has a pretty simple abstraction. The only bet size it's got here is 3/4 pot.
No, okay, then 3/4 pot.
Yeah, seems good to bet. And yeah, it's 100% bet.
Okay, I will check again.
Yeah.
I would call.
Yeah. I think this is one of those spots that we were just talking about where you can raise with a medium strength hand. And our randomizer here did give us an 87. So
Okay.
I think it's a consideration that you could raise, but I agree. I would almost always call here. And yeah, the computer says always call.
Okay, I would check with our hand.
Yeah, check, I think, just about everything here. And we face another bet.
Yeah, it's, I think, already getting our hand is very neutral. So
yeah, I agree. I think our hand is worth very close to 0 here.
Okay, being a need, I would fold actually.
My intuition is that you're meant to call either sometimes or always here. I would probably call. We've rolled a 45. I think I would mostly just.
For you, the bigger the number is more aggressive,
yes.
Or it's the other way around?
More aggressive. Yeah, I think this is a call, but I could be mistaken.
No, basically.
It almost always folds.
It's actually false?
Yeah.
Oh. Nice. No, but I mean, also I a bit maybe overfold because I think I will play badly on the river. I will not be able to play well on the river. That's the thing. So even if I give up very little EV by folding, I would rather take then.
That's a reasonable approach. You have to worry that your opponents might predict that and start bluffing you more on the turn and less on the river.
That's just true.
And that is potentially a dangerous thing to do, but it is, also does make a lot of sense. If you think you have a very close decision on the turn and the river is going to be difficult, it's a good way to avoid making a big mistake to just fold immediately.
Yeah, but in our match we will, split the streets. Actually, I will not do it. Yeah, so alternate the streets. Yeah. Okay, so again,
big blind hands.
Honestly, check. So
yeah. Not sure why it keeps giving me big blind hands instead of some of these.
This one, 96, I will raise 520.
Yeah, this feels like a good one to raise with. Yeah. It, in fact, even raises more often than it calls.
And I will fold, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, fold. Okay, here we can only bet. I know that on Monotone it likes to bet very small amounts, like so.
Yeah, I think with a more sophisticated model here, we would often choose more like quarter or third pot rather than half pot. But
I would maybe choose this hand to check and then bluff river, I think, because it just has no K5, okay, very bad. Straight, but that's my main line with this hand would be to check back, and then like delayed bluff.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach here. I think it's probably okay to bet sometimes on the flop or the turn as well. The monotone boards tend to have a lot of mixed strategies where hands will sometimes bet and sometimes check. But yeah, I think checking here is a good play. So in fact, the computer says this hand is supposed to check only 13% of the time and bet 85% of the time.
Okay.
Which is not to say checking is bad. Checking and betting are equal value, but with this particular hand, the computer likes to bet pretty often. And now I think we're in very much the same situation on the turn where...
Yeah, we picked no gut shot, so I will stick with my plan and check again. And then bluff almost any river. Not this one.
The computer wants to bet almost always there, actually.
Again, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like I wonder why. Like he defends so many offsuit hands, or what?
Yeah. You get a lot of folds betting on either the flop or the turn. And there can be an interesting mechanic on monotone boards and certain other scenarios too, where you choose your bluffs from your very worst hands rather than your medium strength ones. This is a very unfamiliar idea for somebody who plays more PLO than Hold'em, because it's you don't really see the same thing in PLO so much. But an interesting way to think about it is that you want to choose as bluffing hands that lose a minimal amount of equity by betting and making your opponent's range tighter and stronger. So the most obvious example of this is that you want to bluff with strong draws, because you have a flush draw, you have the nut flush draw, you're going to make the nuts by the river a third of the time. And it's going to be the nuts no matter how strong your opponent's range gets. But actually the same mechanic works in a very different way in certain spots, where you take a hand like 9-5 of diamonds on a 7-3-10 with 3 hearts. And this hand is worth almost nothing even against the very wide range after you check behind. So you lose less by betting it and making your opponent's range stronger than you would if you used a hand like, say, King 8, which is going to win at showdown sometimes, or 2-4 with no hearts, which is more likely to win by rivering a straight or a pair against the wider range that you're playing against in the check line than against the tighter range that you're playing against after betting. So there are certain scenarios where you pull your bluffing hands from your very weakest hands rather than your drawing hands, or a combination of the two.
The point, like we have to have 9 high or worse and have no gut shot is very difficult. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
It's 5 and basically that's it. Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah. And now with 13, I would fold.
Yeah, I think this is going to call rarely or never. Yeah, the computer wanted to call about half the time, and also you can bluff raise a little bit. Yeah, which makes sense. A rivered pair is often a good card to bluff with, because it blocks the strongest 2-pair hands in your opponent's range.
So what happened here? Did we open 5-3?
We opened, yeah. We're the button here.
We opened this hand?
Yeah. Some frequency to raise some of the very weakest hands.
Okay, 73, I don't know. Let's bet. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is a decent one to bet with. Yeah.
But again, it was split, yeah? It was 42%.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of mixed strategies in Heads Up No Limit.
Okay, we check.
Yep.
We check.
Yep.
Hope he checks. 3 is too much. 3 I mean, if we could block, maybe it would make sense.
Yeah, if we could bet like 1.5 here, I think it would make sense.
So now we check.
But for 3, we can't.
And this one we would call the river mostly, or not?
Yeah, I believe so. I hit replay hand instead of next hand.
But then look what we would do if he bets river somehow.
Yeah.
Since you pressed it. We cannot do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, we defend, we check.
Are we getting a message here to wrap it up? We may be running out of time.
Okay, let's do like
I'm not sure.
Two hands. Last two hands. So we check.
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 Yeah. Too likely to win by checking to showdown to bet it.
Like in 6 marks, it's a fold for sure.
Yeah, but heads up, it does feel close.
We have 2 flush brokers. I mean, honestly, I would fold.
I would fold as well. I think fold is the best play here. Yeah, the computer always folds.
99%. Oh. Check.
Check.
I actually, if we could block, maybe it would make sense to just protect against river chop against what 4 5 of spades, just so he cannot chop.
Yeah, but with a 1 roll and only the big size here, I think clearly check.
And again, 3 is way too much. Check.
Yeah, so check.
Okay, 20. I don't know, but blocking pairs is good. Yeah,
blocking pairs is very good. Yeah, the in position player is virtually never going to bluff with a queen or a 9 in their hand. So I think that is sufficient to always call here. I think you're going to call all of your 2 pair combinations.
Yeah. Okay. 92%.
92%, and the remainder is raise, not fold.
Cool.
The 2 pair combinations are good for bluff raising as well.
Why?
For basically the same reason that they're good for calling. You just make it more likely your opponent will have a bluff and less likely your opponent will have a strong hand. So it's difficult to have any sort of directly relevant blocker on a 4 flush board like this, because obviously, I mean, if you have a big heart, that's already a strong hand in addition to blocking your opponent's strong hand. So you have to choose bluffs from somewhere, and the 2 pair combinations are the best ones.
Yeah, that's too much real often. I always want to have a blocker, to bluff on monotone boards. Here it's different.
Yeah. The blocker mechanics for monotone boards are very different from Omaha to Hold'em.
And let's say we raise, would we raise 10 of hearts?
Yes. Yeah. In this line, I think definitely 10 of hearts is strong enough to raise.
8 of hearts?
I want to say if we got here with 8 of hearts, it would be close, but for that reason, we would almost always bet it ourselves, because it's not quite strong enough to be excited about check raising, and you definitely want 1 bet to go in.
So and a bit too strong to check call, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'd almost always bet the 8 of hearts yourself, and you would often check raise with the 10 or better. Okay, so I want to thank you. I mean, it was really extremely interesting for me. I hope you got 10%. This was a lot of fun and an honor for me too. From your poker lesson. This was great. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. This was really fun. Yeah. And okay, tomorrow, let's crush them. I'm ready. I don't want to lose to pads. Okay. See you.
Same time, yeah, tomorrow.
Same time tomorrow. Yep.
Okay. So goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye, Isaac.
All right. Bye, everybody. Good night.